also it's true that many people don't have the opportunities that I have, or it's impossible for them to even dream of this. The collateral damage of capitalism has been poverty, has been inequality of income. So while we should appreciate the good things about capitalism, we can also evolve capitalism to be more than that, right? And then I thought I was becoming a worse person along the way. I wasn't proud of myself. I had very low self-worth. And that's what ignited the introspection. Action, right? Like, it's okay to know what the truth is. It's okay to know what your moral obligation is. But if you don't act on it, then it's just, and you're lost in inconsistency. I'm really thinking of quitting my job and doing something more meaningful. I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on solving real social and environmental problems. So I came to India in December 2019 and be like, okay, bas, Abhina, let's figure out what I want to do here and stuff. Before jumping into becoming an entrepreneur, I think it's really important to understand what it entails, right? And to see both sides of it. They are trying to solve problems. They're not trying to make money as their primary goal. It's an important goal. Let's say today, I'm an entrepreneur. Let's say 5 years, 10 years, this fails. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop working on solving this problem. Sure. I'll just try again or try a different route. Yeah. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on this. So Pranjali was this 20-year-old girl who came and looking for a job. So we gave her the full time. So much potential. Really, so her confidence grew. Enthusiastic, and she was doing really well. And then suddenly one day she doesn't show up to work. Both of them went to her house, and they find her on a bed with a swollen face, can't speak, can't talk. But when the husband picked up the phone, he was like, "Why are you calling? Right. Stop calling me." And he got into a fight. The husband gave my team member a death threat. I will kill you. No, there's no hero villains. This is complex. People are trying their best. Not everyone is bad. And I think a lot of the youth today, and this is me venting to some extent, is like very guarded, very safe. There's a very, they're in a bit of a bubble.
So hi Anish, like क्या नहीं किया है आपने? Like you've spent 15 months in Guatemala, you've stayed for 6 months in Nairobi. Like, I mean, this is amazing. Like, I want to know, what was the moment of epiphany for you in the United States?
Hi Medha, thanks for having me. So, no, I think when I was in New York, I was working in corporate America, I was working in finance. I was this kid from Aurangabad, arguably, who grew up in Dubai, and now I was in the greatest city in the world. I felt like this was it, right? This was my dream. I know when I moved to New York, I was like, yes, I know this is where I imagined myself for the rest of my life. And
it's the dream of every Indian parent
also
to send their kid, especially their son, to the United States for his higher education. And I mean, knowing your story, you gave up exactly that. I mean, you lived that dream.
Right.
And
that dream also became my dream, right? Like, even though it is like, but the reflection there eventually was that I feel like this is like a societal pressure that, you know, you're supposed to walk down these certain roads, things you should do. You should be doing this. You should be getting a job. You should be getting promoted. You should be getting your green card. You should get married. You should, you know, move to the suburbs. So I felt like that was something almost scripted. And I think the hack or the scam there is that you feel like you're thinking it, right? You're like, oh, this is what I should do. This is my volition, right? And
it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's quote unquote the right thing to do. But I think when I did do all of those quote-unquote right things, I was like, oh shit, I have everything and I'm really depressed. Why is that? I think that was the best thing that could have happened because it gave me perspective. I felt like it made me free. I was like, oh, have you seen the movie V for Vendetta? It's such an amazing movie, and there's that one scene, right, where Natalie Portman just like, you see her like become free, right? And it's like, it's so ironic, but that's how I felt, right? I was like, oh, I see the light. I feel like I'm so lucky to have all these opportunities in my life, and I should be using the privilege that I have to do something more meaningful, not to be the hero, but for my own sanity. So I think that was an important moment. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like one day I was like, it's like a slow burn, and it kind of ignited a journey of introspection, which eventually led to all of that, and to what I'm doing now.
I mean, you know, like when someone from the outside reads about you, you're seeing like this guy who's got this great education and he's gone to the US and then he's working, you had a very good job, and then there's you writing about your experiences in Guatemala and Nairobi. I really want you to share something about, how did those travels happen? What made you kind of pack your bags, quit the job, and just the...
And yes, there were many factors, but I think, so when I was working in New York, it was really good. I was doing well for myself. I was climbing the ladder very quickly. I was, I think, the youngest director in that company. I did apply for my green card. But I think it was also not a very fun, or not fun is not the right word. It just felt like it was not a great environment, because I was making rich people richer while making myself richer, while being super stressed out and super tough on the team, and like it just felt very pointless, right? I'm like, what is the point of working so hard to make some rich people richer? It just doesn't make any sense. And then I thought I was becoming a worse person along the way. I wasn't proud of myself. I had very low self-worth, and that's what ignited the introspection, right? So then started thinking and reading for myself, and realized that, I think the way I think about it is that, what can I know that is as close to the truth as possible? Is that I'm very lucky to have the opportunities that I have. And also it's true that many people don't have the opportunities that I have, or it's impossible for them to even dream of this.
Okay.
And I think that's a inherent injustice in the system we've built, right? So while capitalism has been amazing for a lot of things, we can have these fancy conversations. It does come, it's been disproportionate. The collateral damage of capitalism has been poverty, has been inequality of income. So while we should appreciate the good things about capitalism, we can also evolve capitalism to be more than that, right? So that became a very strong truth for me. And then the second thing was like, okay, who has the most power to do this? It's people with power, people with money, people with privilege, people with an ability to do, right?
Yeah.
So if that is a truth, then that morally obligates me to do something about it, right? So that was like my moral obligation. So this is the truth, this is a moral obligation. And then the ultimate resonance is the action, right? Like, it's okay to know what the truth is, it's okay to know what your moral obligation is, but if you don't act on it, then it's just, then you're lost in inconsistency.
Sure.
But I think that was okay, I need to do this now. And that was the overall trigger to quit my job and be like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on solving real social environmental problems on the ground up. And I think, and that began, so then I was like, okay, I'm this kid from New York who doesn't know anything about India or doesn't know anything about impact. So I did not want to be that guy from New York who's like, mujhe sab aata hai. Like, no, I don't know anything about India. I haven't lived here in 20 years. I know nothing about making change happen. So I realized that I want to spend the next 2-3 years learning about impact, learning about how to make change happen. And I want to do that outside of India and then eventually India, because the goal was, once I come to India, I don't leave. Because to make change happen, it takes decades and decades and decades. So then I created this plan. And the plan was to spend 6 months in South America, 6 months in Sub-Saharan Africa, 6 months in Southeast Asia, and 6 months in India.
And why these countries?
So I wanted to spend time in different developing culture. So countries in the developing world with different cultures.
Sure.
That was the plan. The 6 months in Guatemala, I eventually chose Guatemala as a place to volunteer. The 6 months became 15 months, which was also beautiful because at the 6-month mark, I realized, I'm just making impact. I'm speaking the language now, I can communicate and I can teach in this language.
You spoke the language.
You have to, right? In Guatemala, you can't, like Spanish, English doesn't work. Whereas in Kenya, in Nairobi, it's very English friendly. So you can get away with not knowing Swahili.
Okay.
But in Guatemala, you have to, right? So that was the first big, it was so humbling because you might have all the knowledge, but you're deaf and dumb, right? Because you can't really speak, you can't really understand. But at the 6-month mark, I was like, I'm just making the impact. I've just won the confidence of the entrepreneur, the social entrepreneur I'm working for. It would be dumb to leave now, right?
Yeah.
So that became 15 months. And then I was like, okay, I have to change the plan now. I can't just keep doing this for good. So, but I have to do Sub-Saharan Africa. Statistically, Sub-Saharan Africa is just not great, which means that a lot of great work is happening there. So I ended up choosing Nairobi, and I'm like, this only has to be 6 months. I can't just keep like extending things. And then after that, I realized that, okay, I get the impact space. Then I did a quick 3-month course in London where I upskilled to learn data science, AI, and ML, like how to code. I thought that was the future. This was in 2019. And that was my precursor to coming to India. So I came to India in December 2019 and be like, okay, bas, Abhina, let's figure out what I want to do here and start.
I mean, it's quite a journey, and you're literally answering all my. You've answered.
Sorry.
No, like, not sorry. I'm just like, it's such a passionate journey. But you know, when you leave this very conventional space and you kind of try to build a very unconventional so-called life for yourself, don't you face like some kind of backlash?
Yeah. So that's the other thing I should have said also that I haven't mentioned, is that I've been very lucky to have an amazing support system, which again makes me more obligated to do this work, right? Like, and there are two sets of people here that are very important. One is my parents, who are just like, when I told them that, I remember this conversation, I'm like, listen, I'm going to quit my job. I'm really thinking of quitting my job and doing something more meaningful. And they're like, yeah, do it. We totally trust you. I think that support, that has been like crucial, right? And they're amazing, but I think I think the message that I like to drive here is that, remember, it's a two-way street, right? People are like, oh, my parents don't support me. But what sometimes I don't understand is that, you don't get the full picture, because most parents want to support you, but if you abuse their support, if you're like, you take advantage of it, you do dumb things, don't get good grades, then it's hard for them to support you. So yes, there are some unsupportive parents, but then for some parents they are supportive, but as long as you don't abuse their support. And I think that give and take is really important, right? Like, where I felt like they gave me the freedom, but I made mistakes, but I didn't abuse the freedom, right? And that created a very positive relationship between us, where it was very mutual. And they're amazing. My parents are amazing. And the second person who had a very pivotal role in my life is my sister. She's 9 years older than me. She's like my second mother from the same mother. She's super cool. But she was like she's the one who kind of planted these seeds of social entrepreneurship in my brain, like, hey, look, you can use entrepreneurship to solve problems. And she sent this book to me called The Blue Sweater by Jacqueline Novogratz, who's the founder of Acumen. And I remember reading the book and crying, and I'm like, wow, this is it. Like, this is something that I want to do. This is the inspiration that I seek. And and that was like now almost like 8 years ago, and I'm still a big fan of Jacqueline Novogratz and Acumen and the work there. And yeah, she's like a hero of mine, right? Like Jacqueline Novogratz and my sister. So again, like really good, lucky to have all these support systems. So I didn't have severe backlash, at least not from my immediate family. I think what was awkward was for my parents to sometimes answer questions. हाँ तुम्हारे बेटे ने job छोड़ दी, and so they felt a little bit like, what is he doing? But they're so great. Like, I don't think there was really any issue.
And you wrote in your blog, and I have to mention that your blogs are absolutely amazing. Like, just so addictive.
Thank you.
And they're so relatable to people across like age groups. You wrote that during your childhood, you visited somebody who worked with Vinoba Bhave, and you were, I think, 13 years old. I mean, do you feel that? I think those are like are the years that shape us up, right? Like, I do find you very rooted in our rural, background as well. And
no, I mean, I don't think that. I think maybe. I did go to the Vinoba Bhave ashram recently, which was like when I moved back. Oh no, actually no, like last year. And I think I met somebody who was a friend of my parents when they were living in England.
A friend of your dad's.
Yeah, and he was.
Oh, that was recent.
That was recent.
Okay.
No, so I think my early on journey was not. I was a very big sports fan. I wanted to play for.
Be a footballer.
Yeah, I wanted to play football. I wanted to play for Arsenal. Then I was like, okay, I'm not good enough to play for Arsenal.
Fancy dreams.
So then I was like, I'll work for Arsenal, and then I'm like, so I studied sports management. Right. Like my dad and my parents basically allowed me to go to the US to study sports management, which is again like, why would they do that? But it was so great that they let me, because if they hadn't, I would be like, but tumne bola na ki do what you love, follow your dreams. My dream was to be in sports, so I would have fought them. But then I didn't fight them because they let me do it. Went there, realized in the first 3 months it was a waste of time. So then I added on a business degree. But then, I didn't, and then it just kind of all worked out, I guess, in the end. And I'm glad I don't work in the sports space right now. I think the work that I'm doing right now is a lot more meaningful for me. I still love sports. But so all of it kind of works out, right? So I think they made some very brave decisions. I think I've always had I think the one experience I had when I was a bit younger, I think I was in grade 11, I was like, Mom, I need to get into a university in the US. I need some volunteering hours. Please find a non-profit for me to volunteer. Yeah. I don't care what cause it is, something. So she called some friends of hers and she connected me to Gulshan Auntie or Gulshan Kavarana. She ran this non-profit called Special Family Support, SFS, where they support not only children with special needs or children with determination, but also their families. And I remember going there, I'm like, yeah, I'll get some volunteering hours in. And the first day, she asked all the new volunteers, like, why are you guys here? And I'm like this, confident young man. I raise my hand. I'm like, I'm here to help these kids. And she's like, no, you're not here. They don't need your help. Don't think of yourself as somebody special. They just want to just treat them like somebody, just treat them like you treat anybody else, right? And till today, Gulshan Auntie is one of my mentors and somebody I've learned so much from. And those volunteering hours became so much more than just that, right? I think that was a seed that was sown where I'm like, I want to do this kind of work. But no, then I went to the US and I got distracted, right? I was like, oh, money, let's climb the ladder, let's move forward. I think that was a seed that was sown when I was younger. And I learned so much about giving and about how complex things are and things that are in your control, things that are out of your control. So I think that was a more pivotal moment when I was younger.
I want to know about your, if you were to advise an entrepreneur now about, I know every second young person wants to quit their job and start something and build a new product and build something in tech and do something in AI and whatnot. And a lot of these people may or may not have support from their families. And as you know, in India, we don't, our adult life is not that independent of, our families. So if you were to give advice to, anybody who wants to start up, because I see your background, you've been here, done that, you've lived two very different lives, and then you came back, and you came back in a way that you delved into the rural sort of, like a different section of society and planning to give back. So what would be your advice to somebody who wants to quit his job and start something? And
it would be don't become an entrepreneur unless you're very sure that is what you want to do, right? I think there's a lot of grandiose, a lot of allure to being an entrepreneur. You hear all these things, but it's really tough, right? I think it's great. I wouldn't choose anything differently, but I think before jumping into becoming an entrepreneur, it's
Don't
very...
read my notes.
Huh? No, before jumping into becoming an entrepreneur, I think it's really important to understand what it entails, right? And to see both sides of it. And what I would recommend to fellow or future entrepreneurs who want to be entrepreneurs, that first work for entrepreneurs. Find a cause you care for, find a problem you want to solve, and find somebody who's doing something interesting in it, right? Then go work, see, learn, and then when you feel like you're ready, when you feel like, oh, I see a gap here, I see that, what this company is doing is this, but I can do something different, then take the leap. Because honestly, what I think the Silicon Valley culture or this startup culture, they've kind of bastardized the system a bit, where there's a big rush to let's start something in 3 years, let's exit, let's, and it's just, and that's not how it works.
I think most people are doing that.
Yeah, I think if that's your goal, then it's different. But if you want to really build a business, or you really want to solve a problem, whether it's socially related, think of any good company. They are trying to solve problems. They're not trying to make money as their primary goal. It's an important goal, let's say, but they've been successful because they are trying to solve problems over the long run. Right. Now, whether it's the search problem, which is Google, or whether it's more deep-rooted problems like poverty, or environment, they're problems, right? So you want to be obsessed
beautiful tech like Apple.
Right, or tech, yeah. I mean, they solved a different problem, right? Like I feel like they're two ends of a pyramid, right? Like I think the Googles and the Apples of the world innovate for the top end of the pyramid, right? People that want AirPods or want these fancy phones. But I think there's an innovation that can happen at the bottom of the pyramid as well, which can hopefully lift this pyramid so that it becomes more of a diamond. So I think there's innovation at different levels, but it's solving problems that's really important from an entrepreneur perspective. And I think it's tough. You need to have support. It's not fair. Like, it's not a fair race. It's not like it's an Olympics or it's like you're running a 100-meter race, everyone starts the same line. You need to know what your unfair advantage is. Whether it's money, whether it's a skill set, you need to know.
You said, you've written, like, I had an unfair advantage that I could invest in the problem that I believed in.
Right, and I think and everybody has their own sets of unfair advantages. And if you don't, then think twice about this, because there's a lot more to lose sometimes, and it's tough. It's tough work, right? It's rewarding also, so it's good. The goal is not to discourage, but the goal is to be realistic about it.
Like, so your mission statement, right? How can we fundamentally increase the value of impossible to recycle waste and use that to empower waste pickers out of poverty? Did you have this mission statement when you started? Because I know you started in December 2020, where your co-founder kind of did his first successful experiment. And it was the lockdown time. I mean, as it is, it was quite a lost period for most entrepreneurs. And then I know you launched your first product in February 2023. Right, which is...
long time.
So I don't want to ask you mundane questions like patience and perseverance. It's obvious you had the patience and perseverance, but did you know your mission from day one, or did you guys figure it out along the way?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think this is why people want most podcasts or interviews, they want, give me this answer in 1 minute, in 30 seconds. I'm like, I can't. First of all, I could talk a lot. No, it took really long. It took really long for us to get to where we are, right? So from the day I quit to when we started was 3 years, right? And I had an overarching, so I remember reading this book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, which talks about how we should work hard. Called Grit, yeah.
Yes.
And it's a great book.
Yeah.
But, like any good book, sometimes the core messages that someone takes from the book is not the core message, right? Which is, one thing she talks about in this book is setting big goals in your life. You should have a big goal that you kind of commit to, you etch in stone. And then you can supplement that with small goals that helps making decisions come true. Like she gives an example of her goal, which is she wants to maximize the potential of children. Right? So that's why she writes books, she gives TED Talks, she works as a professor who does research. So she's trying to maximize children's potential.
Everything becomes a byproduct of that.
Exactly. All your goals, all of your actions are somewhat tied to that, right? And the goal can't be too specific, it can't be too vague. It has to be the right balance. And so I think that was an important thing I learned. And so after I quit and after doing some research, I realized that a core burning for me was this injustice, this perceived injustice of inequality.
And you've written a lot about inequality.
So I think that was an important trigger. And then my goal became how do I spend the rest of my life getting as many people out of poverty as possible, while making sure that the earth doesn't implode, right? Based on the best of my ability, right? So that became my overarching goal. And then I didn't rush to jump to a core mission statement. I think this is really important, embracing that uncertainty, being listen, I have a high goal, an overall goal, but I don't know the exact how. And then, after my time in Guatemala, after my time in Nairobi, when I came to India, I then started researching the poverty space. And I came across the waste picker population. And then I researched the waste space. Research is all kinds, right? Primary, secondary, tertiary, books, papers. I volunteered to work for a nonprofit. And then I isolated that the problem that I was seeing is that there is not enough technology that fundamentally increases the value of waste, right? Because if you increase the value of waste, all of the incentives align. You have a lot of people working with waste pickers, you have a lot of people working on platforms to connect aggregators to plastic recycling, pellet, material
literally
buyers.
your TED Talk playing again.
Sorry. Yeah, so I found all of this. I saw all of this, right? And I'm like, no, but there's not enough people working on this issue. And then you also have, you have to look at it holistically. You can't just look at it from a technology perspective. You do have a population of waste pickers that are affected, and I had a clear vision for that, which is I don't think waste picking should exist as an occupation.
Yeah.
So, long answer, long question, long answer.
No, I've actually written in my notes somewhere that you are one of the very few people who look at the problem of waste management, and I've been hearing about this since my graduation days. So I won't say how many years back, but some people look at it in a very, I've never seen somebody look at it as an opportunity. People look at it as like a social problem. Some people look at it as an environmental problem. I've never seen somebody look at it with an economic and a holistic point of view. And I've been hearing waste management since many years. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's looking at it, I mean, we do look at it as a social and environmental issue, right? Yeah. But we look at it to solving it holistically without trying to depend on charity. For instance, charity is really hard to scale. It's focusing on looking at this problem holistically, making sure you're being as inclusive as possible and planning for the long term, right? So that's why it takes time, is that we want to make permanent change, permanently change people's lives, permanently have solutions for problems like chips packets that are very hard to recycle, have like permanent solutions, right? Like long-term solutions. And that takes time.
Didn't you get this, like, now you've become like a social, like a socialist sort of a person.
Socialist? Jeez, no, I wouldn't
say
From
a capitalist
I wouldn't say
guy staying in New York.
No, socialist is also like very far.
Very extreme, yeah.
No. I'm not a person
That's
of
why I was hesitating. But yeah, like maybe you've gone on right on the other side, the other end of the spectrum. I'm sure you've...
No, so I would like to, I feel like a core belief or philosophy of mine is how do we evolve capitalism to be more than just about making money, right? I think that's really important. So that just means that you play with the markets that we have.
Conscious capitalism.
Social-based capitalism.
How do you explain all this to, see, somebody who's well-educated or well-traveled or maybe a little aware, kind or empathetic can understand this, but even I have kind of interacted with investors and other entrepreneurs. A lot of people look at businesses, like it has to make money, or no matter how much meaning is there in it, it's not a business.
True. No, I mean, it's a tough. It's like you're changing the narrative a little bit, right? So it is hard, and everyone doesn't have to understand it. I think that's the power of entrepreneurship as well. Is that the reason I wanted to do this is that also I get to walk the talk, right? I get to show it works. Or that it doesn't work. I mean, there's a high chance we fail. In fact, it's much harder for us to be a social enterprise than it is to be an enterprise that focuses on just making money. If we focused on profit maximization, we'd be making different decisions. I think, and maybe it sounds cocky, that it would be easier because it would just
Give
be like
me an example.
So like for instance, we would not choose chips packets as a thing to start with, right? Because it's really hard to do.
To break it down.
There might be easier ways to make money in the plastic recycling space. Even if we chose plastic recycling, I might not even choose plastic recycling as the place to start off with. So then also like the way we pay our waste pickers, the way we treat them, there's no incentive to do this, right? Like we are increasing our fixed costs against our competitors who, so that means that we have to work extra hard to be extra operational prowess has to be amazing, like operational efficiency has to be really high so that we can expand margins enough to be able to justify our costs, right? And this is what's interesting. Like, what's the beauty of this is that it's not like we don't want to make money, because then that's charity. It's going to fail. It's not going to survive. It's a fancy story. The goal is to maximize impact, not maximize profit. But we can still generate profit to be able to maximize impact, right? So profit doesn't have to be the most important thing. It can be one of the most important things. Like now, for the next 3 years, our focus is monetization and profit, right? Because I'm like, if we can't monetize and make this profitable, then it all falls through, right? So it's that complex. It's complex. It's nuanced. Yes, everyone doesn't need to understand it, but that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. Like I can hopefully show it, and that's the challenge I put down as well. And I could, it could fail miserably in 3 years as well. So
what makes you an entrepreneur? The thrill of the challenge, or the impact that you want to create, or the, you know, like a mix of it? Because again, like I said, from December 2020 to Feb 2023, the amount of research, and then you've written, you've also spoken about the number of experiments, which means like there would have been a lot of failures along the way.
Yeah, so entrepreneurship, I think the way I define it is that it's problem solving, right? You can choose any problem that you want to solve. Social entrepreneurship is solving real social and environmental issues. That's how I see entrepreneurship. It's problem solving, and I love the idea of that. So I think, yeah, that's what I see myself as an entrepreneur, as someone who solves problems. Now, I think my long-term goal is to work on poverty alleviation while making sure that the earth doesn't implode. So entrepreneurship is a tool to be able to do that. So let's say today I'm an entrepreneur. Let's say 5 years, 10 years, this fails. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop working on solving this problem.
Sure.
I'll just try again or try a different route.
Yeah.
But I'm going to spend the rest of my life working on this, right? So I consider it a tool.
I mean, in this day and age of very like quick results, and you know, it's nice to hear that, you know, you have like a long-term game going on.
Yeah, it's so important, you know. I mean, like, look, until you walk the talk, though, it's just a nice story, right? So I feel like the pressure is on, and I love it. Like, that's what I want. But I think the next 3 years are really, really crucial for us. I wouldn't want to do anything else, and it's really exciting, but it's also nerve-wracking. So it's good.
I know you launched your product in February 2023. That was your first product, which is the frames.
Sunglasses.
Right? Like, what happened after that?
Right now, so it's a great question, because we're a material science company at the core of what we do, like from a brain perspective, right? The heart, we're trying to solve social and environmental issues. So then we came up with this material from impossible to recycle plastic waste, and we were like, oh wow, this is great material. But we couldn't sell this material.
Yeah.
Why? Because you need large quantities, first of all, to be able to sell material.
Sure, and you were just a lab.
And we were just a lab, and we couldn't outsource this process because we didn't have,
Your manufacturers wouldn't follow the process that you're following.
Yeah, because they don't have the machinery, right? Like we created a brand new process, so you can't just go to a factory.
And you have a patent as well.
Yeah, we just got a grant came in last month, so pretty excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So then we were like, okay, we can't sell the material. What do we do? Do we make the difficult decision of going up the supply chain to product, right?
Let me pause you here. So when you say the grant came in, I just want you to simplify this, because even I'm like a little clueless on what you're saying. What happens like
in the patent process?
Yes.
Yeah, so it starts, I think the technology building started like when we first started, which was in December 2020 or Feb 2021 is when we moved into our lab. And I think we filed for the patent in May of 2022. Okay. Right? And then it's like a 2-year process, like it goes through a lot of reviews and, back and forth questions. Then it gets, after you file the patent, it gets published. Then it has to go through like Q&A, the reviews from the Indian Patent Office, all of that. And then, you get a final decision. So the average time it takes to get a patent is about 2 years. But since the day you file your patent, your technology is protected. That means that nobody else can just, because now it's available in the public forum. So it's protected. That's why you have people saying patent pending, right? Then the assumption is that hopefully the patent gets granted. But until you get the grant, you're a bit like, please, ho jayega. Hopefully there's no drama, right? So.
And who conceived this idea
of the patent?
Applying for the patent?
I think so. It's very interesting, this, right? My perspective on patents is that patents, I think one of the main reasons we got patents was for investors, because it gives your technology credibility, it gives it validation. In fact, we're not like, for us, it's not very important to get a patent. Like, that's not the most important thing in the world. In fact, if there's technology that exists, then we can just operationalize, that's also fine, right? But then if we are doing something novel, why not have the option of protecting it in case in the future we want to make sure that nobody abuses it, or because we got some. I remember once when we first went viral, you always have the haters, right? Like somebody saying the negative. One of the negative comments was that, oh, this is nothing new in this technology. It's like, fine, sure, that's your perspective. We're happy to have a conversation about it. And then it's funny. We reached out to these people. We're like, hey, let's have calls. Very few actually followed up with them. We shared all the reasons why we thought it was novel. Anyway,
you had calls with the haters.
Yeah, because we'd like to. We're very transparent. We're like, hey, here's we're not trying to hide. Nothing's like closed off. We try to be as transparent as possible. So we kind of try to have a reasonable conversation with them. But once we thought that there was no room, then we're like, okay, this is not a good use of anyone's time.
Sure.
But one of the other critiques we got was that, oh, you're filing for patents. That means that you don't really want to solve this problem because you're protecting your technology. If you really want this technology to proliferate, you wouldn't patent it, right?
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, fair, fair argument. So we're like, first of all, if somebody copies that, it's not like we're going to. I don't think we have the capacity, and also like it's a high barriers to entry, etc.
Edit that out.
Sure, high barriers to entry, but no, I think that's so.
A lot of people in India make money just by suing other people.
Yeah, I think it's worse in the US, right? You have companies who just focus on this. But anyway, sure, right? I think so. We're not like very obsessed with that, and in the future, we are happy to open source our patents. But I think it's just having that optionality. We want to do licensing in the future. And hopefully that becomes a source of revenue which will help sustain our impact as well. So that's there. But I think the patent only goes a certain amount. In the end, you have to be able to operationally run this. If you can't, then the patent doesn't mean anything,
point?
right?
Yeah.
And it's not like a piece of code, right? As some people patent an algorithm and you can copy paste the algorithm, right? Like literally. For us, you can't just copy paste this plant, or you can't just copy. It's a lot of work. It's capex. It's a lot. It's more complex. So that's the whole, IP. We'll hopefully file for more patents. We have some interesting technologies that we're developing, but it really is not the end-all, be-all. It gives us a lot of credibility. It's so funny. We got the grant. We posted it on our on LinkedIn, I think, and and it was like so much positive response. And it's so great, right? We're proud of the work we're doing. People want to support our journey.
Yeah.
But for us, nothing had changed, right? The only thing that changed was some independent body has granted us this patent.
Has given
for
you
us,
validation.
Some validation, right? So some goodwill, but our goal isn't changing, right? Or it isn't. It's maybe being helped a little bit, but it isn't fundamentally changing where we head. But yeah, it was nice. So we realized that we need to go up the supply chain. So we decided we'll do a product, and because we were getting really high quality material, we wanted to do something that was difficult to do, right?
What do you mean by high quality?
So we were getting really good tensile strength, which is like how strong the material is, and a good elongation at break, which is how flexible the material is. So the combination of these two properties was really decent.
Sure. So it's not just sunglasses. You can make so
many different types of products with it, right? And I think and we were and at a very high recycled content. It's 100% recycled. We do add 10% of additives and compatibilizers, but it's 100% recycled, right? And this is confusing. And I want to clarify that because in the beginning we kept saying 90% recycled because we want to be super transparent, 90% and then 90% of waste and 10% of additives and compatibilizers. And then we went into the industry and people were like, no, but you don't have any virgin plastic to it? I'm like, no, we don't have any virgin. Then it's 100% recycled. We're like, no, we add 10% of this masala, to it. And they're like, no, that doesn't count. I'm like, so we're shooting ourselves in the foot here, right?
Right.
But I still want to be transparent because people don't tell you how much additives and masala they add to their mix, right? So what we decided was we'll say we're 100% recycled plus 10% of 10 pph parts per 100 of additives and compatibilizers.
Okay.
So it's like we're middle ground, right? Not shooting ourselves in the foot, but still being transparent.
Sure.
So we're 100% recycled, and to get the properties we're getting, we're very proud of. So we're like, we don't want to make bricks and tiles because those are arguably easy to make. You can take any material and put enough cement in it or whatever or silica to make it into bricks. Want to do something that was a bit more premium, a bit more high quality.
Yeah.
Because the goal is to replace virgin plastic with recycled sustainable materials as much as possible, right?
Can I ask you a boring question? Who's your target audience?
Our target audience is manufacturers who use materials, right? Right now we want to sell to eyewear manufacturers like Lenskart and Titan Eye and maybe Luxottica and Warby Parker, etc.
Right.
So sunglasses then became a proof of concept, right? Hey, look, you can take this impossible to recycle plastic waste to really high-end products with it, that hopefully have like the same finished quality, and the first version versus this version is like much different. But like if you see, you can do all of these things to this and it won't break, right? So it's not just some gimmick, right? Like we can do all of this, and so there's a lot of work to get there, and we're still not fully there. Like, you know, we're trying to get there. But I wanted to show off the properties of our material, and what we and so it was a difficult decision. Like even our mentors were like, is this the smart thing to do? Going into product is really hard. It's complex. Turned out to be the secret to our success so far. Because it serves 4 functions. Number 1, it is excellent R&D. We buy our own material, we mold it, we know how to coat it with colors, we know how to print on it. And all of these things are really important for manufacturers because they don't want just the material, they want to know how to use it. And we've iterated and improved on it over the course of the year since we've launched.
You've kept the process in-house.
And
you can improvise on it.
Yeah, and because we're buying, I'm not going to a manufacturer being like, sir, please take our material, please try, right? Because they'll be like, we don't have time. Why would we put kachra in our machines? Yeah, because why would we put kachra that we just, you know, because machines are delicate, they're really expensive. Why would we put unknown material and test it? So you have to take those risks, right? And by making product and by putting it out there, we had true skin in the game, right? And that was excellent R&D for us, right? So number 2, great marketing, right? It caught fire a little bit, and we sold a few, and you know everybody was interested in what we were doing, which turned to great business development because some of these eyewear manufacturers reached out to us, being like, hey, we're interested, you know, everyone's talking, why can't we get a hold of this? And number 4 is that it gives us a bit of cash, right? Like it gives us some income, which is bonus to some extent, right?
Cash is king.
Yeah, and I do not want to be some Silicon Valley company that is like pre-revenue for like 20 years or like 5 years and just raising a bunch of cash and burning, right? I want to try and build an economically viable business and solution as well so we can survive and be independent. So it turned out to be, again, long answer, but
beneficial,
but it turned out to be beneficial, right? And that also is what led us to Shark Tank, right? Because like, even for an entity like Shark Tank, you know, in the end, it's a reality television show. It needs to be entertaining, right?
I have a very cliche question.
Sure.
How much of that reality TV show is reality?
It's all of it, actually. I think the only part that they scripted, which is not even scripted, is that it's like, hey, they help you with the pitch, right? Like you have 3 minutes, you have to pitch in Hindi, which was like I was very nervous about that. But they help you with that. And in the end, you can say what you want. But they help you with the script because like we know what works, and I'm like, that's great, because for me I was like, Hindi is I'm not super comfortable, so they help with that. And
so do you think like every entrepreneur, it's important for every entrepreneur to have an elevator pitch like that?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think you should have an
clarity?
elevator pitch. Yeah, and you should have many different levels of elevator pitches. Like you have the first 10 seconds and the 30 seconds and the 50 seconds, and then you have like the say enough to be interesting and then wait for the other person to ask you a question. You don't want to babble too long, like I babble a lot.
It's a podcast.
So no, but I do. No, but so Shark Tank, so nothing was scripted really, and then it becomes a pitch. It's like any other investor pitch. I think, So I think there were elements where I sometimes felt that maybe the sharks were egged to be a little bit more like, hey, ask some difficult questions and, you know, see if you can create some
What was
drama.
a difficult question?
No, I think like they dive deeper, I won't say look for controversy, but like just kind of, you know.
I mean, they have to gauge.
Yeah, don't be scared to ask tough questions. Like, I mean, it's funny because I must have done like at least 50 pitches before that to conventional investors, right?
Really?
So it's like you're used to all the toughest questions. So that wasn't very. I think what was really interesting was that you forget, because you get caught up in the moment of the pitch, that wait, any of this could be on national television, right? So you're like, wait a minute, like I'm not going to discuss employees in detail. I'm not going to discuss compensation plans, like, because wait, like, you know, it's not fair on the company, it's not fair on the employee, like, you know, and with an investor, you can talk about all of this, right? Because it's private, it's like an investor should know. So that was an interesting, at one point I remember, and I'm glad that they didn't include this in the pitch, but one point I was like, guys, you're asking these questions, I can't answer them because I feel like it's very unfair. We're on national television, right? Like, so I cannot be fully transparent about this. And credit to the producers, because I think in our edit, they focused on the right things. They didn't all this unnecessary stuff, I thought, which was unfair. fair, they did remove. And they didn't have to, because under our agreements, they could have put anything. Everything was fair game, right?
Sure.
So I credit them.
Nice. So you had an amazing experience on the Shark Tank, and I want to know, like, so then you build this product and you know, a lot of people get to know about it, and so what's next? Like, before I ask what's next, I want to know, like, how does the factory look like now? And I know it's not just a sunglass
It's
company.
more,
It's not just this that you want to do.
So it's not, I don't call it a factory, I call it a lab. It's
Okay.
a lab, it is an R&D lab.
It's a lab.
It's a very rugged, grunge R&D lab. I highly recommend you all to come visit. Please come visit Medha. And it's very real, because we see the whole process. We don't outsource anything. Well, 95% we don't outsource. So from the chips back to the sunglasses. So it's a bunch of, every machine we've bought is actually something we use. And it's, you know, everyone's very busy. It's a tough place to work, because it's high intensity. We're trying to solve really hard problems. And
I'll come to the part where you just said that, you know, like 70 to 80% of the rack pickers are women. And also you said that, you know, you're upskilling them. You've said it in your other interviews. I'll come to that, but I want to know what the factory, like, what is your next step
with regards to that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the plant, so the R&D lab is that, right? And now we're building our first demonstration plant, which is we want to demonstrate this technology at scale that can prove to future investors or future partners that this technology can work at commercial scale, right? So this demonstration plant is the most important thing we're going to work on.
Demonstration plant.
Demo plant, right? Like, so
that's the factory.
So that's the factory. That's what we're trying to build right now. It's not there.
See, I'm from UP, so I will only understand factory. Like, lab is...
So because the lab, it's small. Like the lab, I think one of our labs is this big, right? So we have 3 little galas. Overall, we're about 1,200 square feet, 12 to 1,500 square feet of lab space, right? And it's like super squeezed in, and you know, probably not very safe at some points. But that's the reality of entrepreneurship, right? We obviously try to care about safety a lot, as much as is reasonable and
Plus,
feasible.
you have to make the most of the resources that you have.
So we don't compromise on that. But that is something that, you know, it's the reality. But now, you know, we're moving to the next stage. We're trying to close a round of funding. We're building our demonstration plant. It's already in design. It should be ready in the next 6 to 12 months, hopefully sooner. So excited, nervous, and we're rethinking everything, right? We're like all old or traditional ways of doing plastic recycling go out the window. We just start from scratch, right? It doesn't mean that we don't take anything from that. Like, there's some things that are done really well, so we involve that.
Why
but we just
reinvent
rethink. Don't reinvent the wheel, but rethink the flow, the process, the energy usage, the water usage, just make it as efficient as possible. So really excited and nervous about that. So that's what's next from a factory perspective.
So I want to ask you one thing, like, now, if you look back at the time when you left your job in New York and now where you're at, like, you're building and you're consistently building, right? So, are you happy now? Like, do you feel like...
So from a mental health perspective, like, off the charts, right? Like, so when I was in New York and depressed, it was very existential, like very nihilistic, like, what's the point of life? And now it's like, the problem is like, will this factory, will we get land that is big enough to fit this factory? How expensive will the land be? Problems that I'd much rather be dealing with, right, than like the purpose of life, right? Not much better from a mental health perspective, self-worth perspective. Like I like myself, and I think that's really important, and that's a message I like to drive, is that when you work in the impact space, you get a lot of pats on your back. Arey wah, kya kaam kar raha hai bachcha, right? And that can get to your head. And it's very important that I think we also are not doing this to be the heroes. We're doing this to solve real problems. So it's very important that this is not about me. This is not about any individual. It's about our work. Not even about our work. It's about solving this problem, right? And I think we really have to attach ourselves to that. And it's tough sometimes because you sometimes get distracted, but that is really core, and we stay true to that.
You know, I think, like, and I've read this in your blog and you've written about it, I think you've always had a struggle with dealing with societal expectations, like most of us, but also, like, you've chosen like a very important challenge, right? Like, you're building a business which might not look conventionally like a good business. So I want to know, like, how do you take care of your mental health now?
Right. No, so it's better, but it doesn't mean that there's no ups and downs. Like there's always it's always a roller coaster, but I think just overall it's like I'm at a better place.
Like you're more satisfied with.
Yeah, like I don't have like I don't doubt what I'm doing, right?
Right.
Like now the burnout part about entrepreneurship, right? Like, facing that head on, like how
Burnout,
important is
stress,
it?
decision making.
Yeah. So, like very conscious about like my routine, very conscious about, how I sleep, what I eat, what time I eat, all of those things, minimizing unnecessary decisions, all of that, right? I have a therapist. I go to therapy as often as possible. I believe it's really important that people do therapy, even if you're in great mental state, in great mental health. I think that's the best time to start because then you have less baggage to bring on board. But it's also very important to find the right therapist, very important. I think so. I do that, and again, it's a luxury, right? It's sometimes expensive. People be like, "Hey, how do I afford a good therapist?"
Sure.
True. So it's up to you guys. Investing in knowing. It's important, like this, to plan what you will do. But it's also important to plan what you will not do. I think that's really important. Like, what am I not going to stress myself about? I think it's important as well. But look, I really, for me, it's like this, I have to give this my all. I really want to work hard on this. It's the best use of my time. What else is there? It's more worth it than this, right? And I feel very lucky to be in that place.
No, that's amazing. I think very few people kind of, and it almost sounds, and I was sharing this with my team, that it sounds like very spiritual. Like your entire journey of being a founder, finding the company, finding the product, the vision and the mission has, it sounds and seems very spiritual. It's like you're finding yourself.
Bang on. And it is, like anybody who says otherwise is like avoiding, right? Like, I mean, if you can go down the rabbit hole of the philosophy of why I do what I do, and it's really interesting, and it's really important, right? Like, especially if you're trying to be a social entrepreneur, your core why, your core burning, your core motivations have to be closely aligned, right, with what you're doing, and you have to reduce inconsistencies as much as possible. And it's not easy, right? And I feel like, I became vegetarian because I was like, I'm working on climate change and I can't, I shouldn't be eating meat. And I love meat. I shouldn't be eating meat. So I did that for 2.5 years. I was like, no, it's too much. I felt like I was sacrificing too much. So now I'm like a weekday vegetarian because I'm like, okay, I'll reduce the amount of meat I eat and then I still have cheat days. So like, you want to beat yourself up. But at the same time, I know that me becoming vegetarian is not going to solve anything, but you're trying to reduce inconsistencies as much as possible in your life, right? And you will never make that zero, but can you get close to it? At least in the core things that you do. And then also, like, what we think of life, right? Like, right now the core belief is physicalism, right? Basically, everything is made up of molecules and atoms, and that's why you're seeing people. And if you really follow that philosophy, it regresses to nihilism, which is pointlessness, because there's no point to existence if everything is made up of atoms and molecules, and a big bang happened 2 billion years ago, right? And then you start seeing alternative philosophies of life, and then that's very interesting, where you're like, oh wait, maybe there's more to this than just atoms and molecules, because guess what? Atoms and molecules are abstractions in our eyes, right? Like, we don't know this to be true. We only know that we perceive it. Doesn't mean that it actually exists, because if you do mushrooms, or if you get really, you start seeing the same molecules behave differently. So what is real, right?
What is real, yeah.
So I think I think my biggest recent epiphany from that perspective is that you cannot be 100% sure about anything.
Right.
And that is really important. So for anybody who I see who's like 100% sure about anything, I'm like, I don't believe in God, but like, who created the Big Bang, right? Like, where did the Big Bang come from? Who pressed that button, right? So I don't know anything for sure. And I think there's a lot of hope in that, right? It gives hope to nihilism because you don't know for sure. And I think that uncertainty is really powerful. Because it's what makes life worth living.
I mean, there's scope for growth. There's scope for like something new, for sure. I think social entrepreneurship, as it is quite hard. There's the entrepreneurship angle, which is hard, and then there's the social angle, which is also very hard. That's an extra added challenge. So for sure, it's very easy to fall because you're seeing the reality of life every single day, and I want to jump on to like the fact that you guys employ rag pickers, right? You're seeing that reality every day. I also want you to share more about, I didn't know that 70 to 80% of the rag pickers were women.
80 to 90% actually of waste pickers in India are women.
And you also shared these two inspirational stories about these women who are working, and my platform wants to build a platform for working women in India, and I want to know, like, from your point of view, why do you think it's important for women to work?
I think it's important for everyone to work, and so why? I think we were talking about this before, right? Like the labor force participation rate for women in India is like between 20 to 30%, and that's really low, and 66% for men. Like that doesn't make any sense. I was also looking up some stats. I also know from my experience that more women work in the non-profit space. So like I think and the numbers aren't very clear here, but like in the US, 70% of people that work in the non-profit space are women, but then there are only 25% I think women that are in leadership positions in non-profits, which is like disproportionate, and there's obviously a pay gap. There's a big pay gap with for-profit and non-profits in general, and there's even a bigger pay gap.
It's a genuine problem with multinationals. When I speak with women leaders, they say, when I want to promote a woman on the board of a company, or when I want to promote a woman, I don't have options, and God blessing if I have options, they don't accept like bigger roles or larger responsibilities. Again, like I feel the importance of working for women, especially in our society, is never highlighted. Like it's important for women to be nurturing, it's important for women to be nice or kind or have children or get married, but you may or may not want to work,
it's like the option, right? It's for me, it's the equality of opportunity, right? Does everybody have an opportunity to do what they want to do, essentially, right? I think we're talking about this before as well, but that's how I see, look, as an entrepreneur, one of your main roles is to maximize the potential of the people that are working with you and set them up for success, right? And everyone's not the same. Forget men, women. Men, women are different biologically, and they're like things that are out of our control. Women menstruate, men don't, right? And then you have individuals are different, right? Some people are very ambitious, some men are ambitious, some women are ambitious, some men are not ambitious, some women are not ambitious. So everyone's different, and it's our role to make sure everybody gets the right platform to be at their best.
For a woman from that section of society to look at her husband and say that I'm going to work and I'm not going to quit.
It was a tough.
It's huge.
No. I think there was a whole. That whole story is really, really sad. And because
I want you to share, because I know that it's a very cultural problem.
Yeah, so I think and it's very interesting where we work, right? So we work in an industrial area, and industrial area, 99% of the people working there are men. It's not like, if I had a daughter, I would also be like, is this the safest place in the world to work, right? Even for a son, I guess, but just generally, right? Like I guess we're protective. So I think so we try, even the conditions of the bathrooms are so bad, right? And we've had women in the past who've been like, this is just terrible, and I'm like, we try to so the bathrooms in our labs are fine, but then they're like public bathrooms in the society or in the gala that are terrible, so getting that fixed, we literally got keys to a special bathroom, got it cleaned, and still that wasn't good enough. So it's tough. So where we actually care or try, imagine the other organizations that don't have an incentive to do this. Right?
If Facebook couldn't do it and Sheryl Sandberg had to write about it, so what are we?
So it's tough. If that's tough for Facebook and Meta, imagine how difficult it is for these industrial complexes, right? And where there are other problems, there are these migrant workers that are working 12-hour shifts for 30 days a month, get paid nothing, without PPE, their children working there. There's it's so complex. We're like this. Anyway, so it's how can we be as inclusive and fair as possible without it being impossible for us to do? At one point we weren't even allowed to make a bathroom in our lab at one point. We moved now from that lab to a different lab, so we're fine. And I was I felt so handcuffed, right? I'm I can't do anything about this. And it's anyway. So it's very difficult. So how do we make things better? But that's a workplace environment. But I strongly believe, I think that my point there is that we can't just make everything the same for everybody because everyone is different, and we have to try and maximize time. Like I'm really considering, like I maybe it's too early for us, but like, and again, I should consult you and other folks who know this better than I do, but like days off for menstruation during times of cramps or whatever, right? Like because it impacts their ability to work, right? And so what's the right answer there, right?
Yeah.
But then
for different people it's different.
For different people it's different. Like what is the right way? Like how can I be the most inclusive without like doing charity at the same time, right? Like so what is the like do you work
without
an extra Saturday or do you
party?
Yeah, so it's really hard because then if the economics don't work then all of this goes kaput, right? So I think it's complex.
It is complex.
It is complex, but I think we try to be as cognizant of it as possible.
Right.
I think that's
what matters.
I think hopefully the start.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to women waste pickers, right? Like 90% of the waste pickers that exist in India are women.
Yeah.
It's shitty lives, and I think I can talk about. So we have 10 former waste pickers that work with us. 7 of them are women. We have 3, or they're either waste pickers or informal workers that we've formalized, right?
Okay.
And what we do for all of them is first we give them contracts and agreements, employment agreements, like you and I would get if you'd work for us.
Sure.
And this doesn't mean much to them because it's a piece of paper, it doesn't really matter. Most of them can't read and write, but we attach like a Hindi translation because their kids maybe are able to read and write. So again, going the extra mile and trying to be like, hey, this is important, right?
Yeah.
More importantly, their incomes increased by an average of 2x, so they're making twice the money that they're making.
Yeah.
So not enough for me, but still much better than what they were doing.
Yeah.
They get health insurance, they get flexible, like they were confused. They're like, one of them waste pickers came to me and was like, I need to take 15 days off.
Yeah.
Can I? I'm like, yeah, you're allowed 20 days off a year, plus 10 days for sick leave, you can. But my money will be cut. Like, no, it's paid holiday. So for them, they get a weekend. They one of the benefits they say to me, they don't say that, oh, we have a contract. They tell other people, we get paid on time. Which is such a weird thing, right? Like, get paid on time is not a benefit. Like, it's an expectation, right? Yeah. But it's like, so that's the world.
I mean, try paying a New Yorker not on time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been there. Right? So I think that's the different world we live in now. All of so now we work directly with Swachh Cooperative to source the women or source the waste pickers. Like, hey, tell us who we should hire.
Yeah.
We obviously have some requirements. They can't be too old if they're doing really some heavy lifting work.
Yeah.
They should be comfortable, right? And so they also have a list of the people most in need. So we have 7 women waste pickers working with us. I think 4 of them have either lost their husbands through suicide or through they died. One of them is divorced. Not divorced, separated because her husband is as an alcoholic and abuses her. They're single mothers that are taking care of the entire household. It's on like peanuts, right? So really, really heavy stories. And Pranjali, who worked with us, doesn't work with us anymore, and there's a not a happy ending over there, and I'm happy to talk about that whole episode if you want. But yeah, so I think this is tough. It's really, really tough, and we try to we're like, because when things get tough, we have to ask the question. Like, this is not an ordinary situation.
Yeah.
So like, if someone doesn't show up to work for a week, what do we do? Do we give them a chance? Like, if you didn't show up to work for a week, you would be terminated without any notice.
I'd be fired.
Right? But then here you're like thinking, like, you really need to understand the context. Like, how many, like, you don't want to be too much. You can't be too pitiful because then you can't scale that. But then you can't be too.
I was going to ask, how does it make business sense? You give someone 15 days off and
you can't. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, so we have to be very cognizant of that, right? And
so
right now we're still early stage. We can afford to do some of these things. But once we start,
moment an investor comes in,
or the break, like we're in research right now.
I'm just quoting you, like soul sucking.
Soul sucking, yeah. So I mean, these are difficult decisions that I don't. If I'm a typical business, I don't have to worry about this. I'm like, no, I'm not going to hire waste pickers. I'm not going to pay them well.
Black and white.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay them well. I'm just going to pay them whatever everybody else is doing, I will do.
Yeah.
A little bit more I'll do.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, check. That's what a lot of people do, right?
Sure.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's wrong with that, different moral question. But, so what we're doing is we don't try and treat our waste pickers special. We try to treat them like we treat any other employee.
Okay.
In very difficult situations, like for instance, one of them came to me the other day. She's like, my husband has liver issues. I'd taken a 1 lakh rupee loan for surgery from a money lender that was charging me 10% interest per month. So I paid him, 10,000
and
rupees.
they have these local money lenders. It's not a bank or.
So I paid this money lender 10,000 rupees a month for a year, and then for like 10 months or something. And then he came back to me and was like, "Okay, I want my principal back because what about my principal?" And she's like, "I'm sorry, I don't have the principal right now." He's like, "Okay, no problem. Just give me your house." Right? And this freaked her out. She's like, "I cannot lose my home. It's a small home. That's the only home I have."
Yeah.
So she came. Now she trusts us because she's been working with us for 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and she's like, "Who do I go to for support?" And we've been we've been fair to her or kind to her from her perspective at least. And she's like, "Can you give me a loan?" Now my teams were like, "Anish, can we do this officially through the company because we should do this, we support, let's give them a loan, but then you can't do it legally because you have to be an NBFC, So I gave a friend's loan to her, right? I gave her a loan as a friend would give your friend a loan. She paid back the money lender, and now she's paying me back at 0%, whatever, but then now what happens is that the first month she paid me on time. Second month she's like, I can't pay you the whole amount, right? And that's become very difficult because you obviously want to support, but then it's like, what's the principle here? So I let it pass. In the third month, she's like, "This won't happen again." In the third month, which is this month actually, she paid me back the monthly, whatever, 10,000 rupees that she was to pay me back. But then her husband picked up her phone and called me and asked for money. And this is so interesting, man. The women in India are amazing because then Seema, she came to me the next day and she's like, "I'm so sorry that my husband reached out to you. I told him he should not do this and I'm so sorry, I apologize." And I'm just like, "Don't worry, it's all good," But she also got it. She's like, I was very upset at him for him, doing this. Then I asked her a more important question. I'm like, "Seema, is there any other issues there here? Like, is he treating you unfairly?" No, he's a good man. He wasn't feeling well. There's no issues. Because we're like, hey, this is a safe space, And man, these stories are really heartbreaking and like encouraging as well at the same time, we still have such a long way to go, and it's like everyone. Like, and I got a call today while I was waiting here actually from another waste picker of ours who had to get surgery. So she's been in surgery for it's been 15 days. She's been in surgery. She's like, "I need to be off for 15 days more. Can I take 15 days off more?" So I'm like, "You can, but we'll have to cut some money from your salary because you've exhausted your leave, right? So we'll see." She's like, "That's fine, don't worry about that." But for her, she just wants the job back, right? Because I've also given her a loan for this operation. So it's like, again, all this is not scalable, but these are things you kind of have to, you're like, this is the work.
It's not scalable, but these are real problems. You can't be like a very mechanical sort of organization, especially if.
And Medha, we have solutions for this. So we're going to start a sister non-profit, right?
Okay.
There are organizations called Rang De. Check out Rang De, amazing. What they do is they do low interest loans for farmers and for employed folks, right? So now I'm going to I'm going to make this scalable. But like, listen, they work with us, they get a salary, I can vouch for that. As soon as we make it a sustainable business. So then through Rang De, we can start giving them 3%, 5% annual loans, right? Which is normal.
Amazing.
Right? So we're going to try and do that. So yes, this is the extra mile though, right? Yeah. This is what social entrepreneurship is. It's extra work, but it's worth it, it's important. I think it's going to be an obligation. I think it's going to become normalized in the next 10 years, 20 years. It's imperative for it to be. And with climate tech, you're seeing this, right? Oh, suddenly climate is important. Yeah, guess what? Because anyway, so.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but it's when you try, and I mean, look, it's not for a second do I want to say that we've figured it out, right? But at least we're trying.
Also I want to say, like, when people are doing social entrepreneurship, like, unfortunately, the most common question is like, where do you put a full stop, Anish? Like, at some point you have to put a full stop. But the idea is to find a solution and not put a full stop to these things. And
and that was the situation that happened with Pranjali, right? Like, we didn't know. I don't know if you've heard the full story, but we didn't know where to, we didn't know where we crossed the line or at what point to stop, right? And I think So yeah, that was a loss in some ways, but you know.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so I mean, I can walk you through the story. So Pranjali was this 20-year-old girl who came looking for a job, and I was like, "You're 20, you should be in college."
Yeah.
And she's like, I have a younger sister who is physically and mentally challenged.
Yeah.
I have a younger brother who's up to no good. Both my parents are dead.
Yeah.
What do you mean I have to go to college, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, you can work, but you know, you need to come on time. You need to be. This is important. It's a job. Like, you know, we obviously we'll give you an opportunity, but you have to. So she started off part time. Started doing really well.
Yeah.
There was some issue with her coming late and not, you know, because she's like, oh, my brother has to drop me or my friend has to drop me, and sometimes, you know, we don't like that. Well, listen, you have to try and be on time as much as possible. You have to respect the, you know, the system, because that's true for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But we're okay. You know, that happens, and we were also like, hey, we'll give you a bicycle. We'll loan you money to buy a bicycle, and so you can have the independence of being able to come to work by yourself, you know, because she didn't live too far, all of that, you know. So we were trying to make it work for her. And then what we did was we sometimes hire people part-time to see how committed they are, and then convert them to full-time when we feel like they're there. Yeah. So, you know, I remember I kept asking our head of manufacturing who works with these, works more with the waste pickers than I do, that, hey, is she ready? She's like, I think she's really good at her work, Anish. So let's do it. But you know, like there's some issue with, like, you know, transport. So we gave her the full time. So much potential. Really, so her confidence grew, enthusiastic, and she was doing really well.
Yeah.
Then we find out randomly one day that she's like, hey guys, I'm getting married.
Yeah.
Right? And so she got married.
Yeah.
And apparently, and this is something that she told some of the other people that they at work. She's like, the husband was like, listen, I don't think you should work, right? And she was like, looked him in the eye and was like, I will never leave this job, right?
Yeah.
And that, when I heard that story, I was like so proud.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
I was like, this is so great.
It's so powerful.
It's so great. And, you know, and yes, and it was a safe space for them. It was, you know, people who complained about the bathrooms weren't our women waste pickers, by the way, right? Just for the record. Anyway, but it's, for them, it's like, it's all relative, right? But she was really, saw the potential for, you know, for her. Like, she can do so many great things, and she could read and write, so I know that she could use the phone, so we knew that we could push her. And then suddenly one day she doesn't show up to work. So we're like, okay, ho gaya kuch. I mean, we don't like it when you don't call in and tell us that you're like anybody else. Right? You can't just not show up to work. So, okay, she doesn't pick up the phone. Second day she doesn't show up to work. We get worried, doesn't pick up the phone. So third day, second or third day, I don't know, we go to her house. I think our like head of manufacturing, and we have like Sandhya Tai, who is like the mother of the ship. Like she's the queen, and she both of them went to her house, and they find her on a bed with a swollen face, can't speak, can't talk. The mentally and physically challenged sister is sitting there. The brother's nowhere to see, and the husband is not there, right? So obviously everyone is like, what's going on? What's the situation?
What happened?
So then we don't get a straight story. What she tells us is that she was in the hospital to get a sonography. So we're like, okay, give us the reports. Like, let us know what's going on. Like, tell us, we can help you. You know, we have health insurance now. Like, you don't need, you know, you admitted that is covered, because giving health insurance is one thing. How to use health insurance? They never use health insurance in their lives. So it's another thing altogether. So she's like, oh no, the reports never came, right? And now we also, when she's not answering, sometimes the husband picks up the phone and answers, right? So obviously, you know, what are you suspecting? What am I suspecting? You know, all of those same things. We were all suspecting. Why is she all like swollen face? Why does she have all these wounds? So we were always like, you know, everything okay at home? What's happening with the husband? Ever since the husband's come, something has happened. Anyway, so what happens is, the first meeting happens, then this is I think where we made a mistake. Then we went for a second. So then we were again not getting answers, not getting a clear answer. Is she actually sick? Did the sonography reports come or not? Did the husband do something? Did she fall? What was the issue?
I want to know what happened.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you what happens. So the second time we go, and this is important because the story is not a happy story. The second time we go there, we get into a fight with the husband. Because the husband's like, who are you to come into our house and ask us all these questions. Now we're obviously coming from, again, we never go alone. We go like with people. You know, we're looking out for her. We're always like concerned about her because we're not sure about this husband who just come into her life. And he was like of a different, I don't want to be like casted, but he was of a different caste. So I think they were different, like from a different state. So like even the fact that the grandmother wasn't like very happy about this, all this drama was there, right? That happens in this different world. So she wasn't happy. So we were like not sure about what's going on, but then he felt threatened. He's like, you know, you can't keep coming to my house. I will take care of because his perspective was that, hey, she's my wife. I will take care of her. Stop it, right?
I own her.
So stop it, right? And we were like, and then the mistake we made was we got angry as well, right? And so we got into a fight. So there were some words exchanged, right? And I think that was not good. This is a sad thing, like not sad thing, but we have to always be the bigger person. You have to, right? You cannot give them fire. You can't give them fuel to throw into the fire because it's just, you don't want to give them reasons, right?
Anyway, what's wrong for you is not wrong for that person.
Exactly. So, because they're different worlds, right? So anyway, so then I was like, okay, second time. And at this point I was like, let's just give up on this. Like, what are we doing? This is really dumb. I'm like, no, like this is, and I was really conflicted. I'm like, this is the work we're doing. This is, you know, if it was anybody else, you know, we have to give this one more chance. She has so much potential. So, and I hadn't like spoken to her yet. And I know that sounds bad, but like when you're the person paying the person, there's a different kind of respect or whatever you get. So I was like, hey, me, along with the head of the Swatch cooperative, which is Sangeeta ma'am, we'll both go together because Swatch is this wastewater collective. We'll just talk to her once in a very safe way. Be like, hey, are you interested in coming back to be or not, right? So then again, a mistake we made. The same person who had a fight with the husband called her to be like, hey, Anish and Sangeeta ma'am will be coming tomorrow morning. But when the husband picked up the phone, he was like, why are you calling?
Right.
Stop calling me. And then he got into a fight.
Right.
With the same guy again. So a mistake there was we should have probably got somebody else to call. I should have friggin' called. Anyway, got into a fight. And then things got sour because the husband gave my team member a death threat. I will kill you if you call. I'm going to come to your house tomorrow to kill you, right? I'm coming to the lab tomorrow to kill you, right? So, okay, well, like maybe it's an empty death threat. So the next morning, this team member tells me about this, and I'm like, oh, like, you know, this is not something that is great, you know, like, and then they come, right? The husband comes to the lab the next day. So we obviously were a little scared, right? But went there. As soon as we went there, I spoke to the husband. The threat was completely diffused, right? Because he was as scared. He was just like, I'm protecting, I know what's happening. I'm taking care of my wife. You know, why are these guys, you know, coming in the way?
So why was her face swollen?
So we find out after all of this. So we diffuse the situation, and I'm like, listen, this is obviously not working out. We don't want to get into fights. There was no real threat. Why don't you know, like we just go our separate ways. You do your thing. We will stop trying, and you know, all the best. Good luck, right?
We'll back off.
Yeah. And then what we found out was that she had gotten a sonography. She was pregnant.
Okay.
She had suddenly discharged herself from the hospital because, I don't know, maybe she thought she couldn't pay the money or something. And while coming back, she had gotten a chakkar, she'd gotten faint and she'd fallen. Yeah. And that's what caused the wounds. We also learned that the husband loved her. He does love her, truly love her. And he was really protecting her. He was like, I will earn the money in the house. You don't, right? So again, it's complex now. Is it like
this is so nuanced?
Yeah, but and that's what, you know, we want just a clip like, this ye hua, ye hero, ye villain. No, there's no hero villains. This is complex.
Yeah.
That people are trying their best. Not everyone is bad. Yes, there are some people that abuse and all of that, but it's really complex, right? Yeah. And the sad thing is that, you know, so we lost there. I think we handled the situation a bit better. We would have...
For sure.
Maybe she would have still been working with us.
Yeah.
I mean, a month or two later, we've not talked about this publicly. We did get a call from her husband and from her sister, from her multiple times, being like, I really want to come back and work with you guys. I really want to come back and work with you guys. And then obviously I'm like so tempted. I'm like, yes, you know, we could, you know, she can come back. But it was not my decision to make. Because I'm not dealing with them, I'm dealing with the team all the time. And also as an important precedent that needs to be set in the company.
Right.
So I spoke to my head of manufacturing who you know, I'm like, hey, this is your call. How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable? Because I didn't get the death threat, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair on other people as well. So I have still shelved it. I'm like, maybe a couple of years from now, we can revisit this, but overall, man, a loss, right? And shit's tough. Yeah.
Very complex.
Yeah, very complex.
And I feel like we're so far away from these realities.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, your years growing up, or maybe your visits to rural India, do you think or your visit to like Guatemala or Nairobi, do you think those things helped you? Because this problem is so complex, I don't think anything prepares you for something like this.
Yeah, it doesn't, right? I think life experiences are really important. The cliche of getting out of your comfort zone is important.
Yeah.
And I think living in different cultures, whether it's in the same country, in different countries, is really important. I think it helps a lot to get perspective. But I think it's a two-way street. You have to be open to it. You have to be comfortable doing it. You could also go and live in London and it's not as different. It's nice, right? Or go live in New York, it's nice. It's different. Living in Guatemala City they're very nice places in Guatemala City you can live in. I was in Quetzaltenango, Shela, which is like far away. It was interesting. Like it's uncomfortable, right? And so I think, I'm not saying that I did it right, but like it's a two-way street. Like you need to be open to experiences, open to learning, open to being adaptive, and open to being wrong, open to not knowing, and thinking through decisions. And I think nothing can prepare you for it, right? You don't, like, in the moment, right? I mean, I remember going to that after they came, you don't know what's going to happen next, right? These guys have come with some intent to do harm.
You don't know if that threat is real or not.
Yeah,
like,
and
you can never tell.
Yeah, so you have to take that risk. You have to kind of, at the same time, you have to kind of know that it's calculated. Like, look at the context here. But I think, yes, the faster you can get experiences in different worlds, I think the more you learn from it. So like experiential learning is really crucial. And I think a lot of the youth today, and this is me venting to some extent, is like very guarded, very secure. There's a very, they're in a bit of a bubble. There's some excellent books on this, The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff. And there's another one that's come out recently, just talks about, how we've coddled our youth too much. Especially like the elite, the rich. And that just makes us weaker, right? Because there's so much privilege, so much opportunity, and it's tough. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I know it's so funny. So Jonathan Haidt talks about this in his books. He's like, we shouldn't coddle our kids, and it's in the streets of New York are the safest as they've ever been. But I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I am petrified for her to walk alone in the streets. So so when I drop her off to Central Park and make her walk back home, I am petrified. But I know that I'm being completely irrational, right? And I think so. It's hard. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, parents aren't like, they love their kids. So, but how much net good are we doing versus harm is an important question to ask.
It's a dichotomy.
And so we have there's a small chance. I mean, there's a chance. Well, that DM Mirza also invests in our company, and it's so funny because one of the things I've asked is that, hey, why don't you come and speak with our women waste pickers, right? Yes, okay, maybe you come from a different background, but you have a platform, and you're an inspiration. It's aspirational, and so we're trying to, and Dia's great. Like I had a great conversation with her, and
I didn't follow.
Sorry, Dia Mirza.
Sure.
Yeah, so so really excited about. I mean, she's great. So I had a great conversation with her.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're still negotiating terms.
She's amazing.
But if she comes, and it was funny because normally, when you get celebrities on board, they're like, oh, how many photos with sunglasses do you want,
not
right?
Like that.
So for us, that's why I'm like, we don't consider you as I mean, we consider you as an investor, as a partner, and join our journey. You obviously have a platform where people listen to you, and hopefully that can help us. But hopefully, and one of the, in the requirements with our team, we're like, we don't really care, do a documentary with us, right? Be the voice for our waste picker or for our work. And then come and talk to these guys, talk to them, right? And see what happens. And for me, that is more valuable than you doing a shoot with sunglasses, right? Like that to me is not the end goal. So it's interesting, it's cool. And then she's we're just finalizing terms right now on whether she'll invest in this round or not. But I mean, whatever said and done, she's still a believer, and she's followed our work for a while, and she's great.
No, and she's someone who walks the talk. She
walks the talk, exactly. And I felt that when I met her, there was a genuineness.
There's
right?
a genuineness.
And genuineness is one thing, and she knows her stuff.
Yeah.
You know, she was talking about. I mean, and I speak to. I know about. Obviously, I live this space, so it was really great to see that. I'm like, let's. You know, you're
she had the knowledge.
You get it, and you know, and it's really not complex. You know, it's people, but it requires effort. So that was that. You know, it's obviously she cares. So it's good. So I'm like, I would love to have someone like that on board.
No, absolutely. I hope that happens for you, and she's a part of my platform too. And if at any point of time, like you need, I mean, it would be amazing because I think a lot of women who have achieved a lot and a lot of people who understand their privilege want to give back.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a moral obligation, but
yeah, it is a moral obligation.
In my perspective, I don't want to impose that on anybody, but I think if you look at it from a truth perspective, right, sometimes I think I could be wrong.
I mean, I remember. So Priyanka Chopra said, being privileged is having responsibility. Like it's understood.
Yeah. True. Rapid fire.
So, Karan Johar. Are you a Bollywood fan?
No. I mean, I'm not a non-fan.
No, the face
I'm
said
not
it,
a
so.
non-fan. I mean, it's fun. Some of the movies are good.
How do you rejuvenate? How do you de-stress?
Football. I play. I read. Yeah.
How does your normal day look like?
Work, right? Work related mostly. Wake up, work out, meditate, work, eat, sleep, wake up.
I thought there was some fancy answer coming.
No. Just the routine is really important. Like wake up at the same time, sleep at the same time, eat at the same time, as much as possible. Very important. Routine.
Do you take days off?
Yeah. Saturday, Sunday is Sundays I actually just read and not do. So I think a secret of being an entrepreneur, or one of the most important requirements of being an entrepreneur that nobody talks about, is how much of the shit stuff you're willing to do. How much of the shit work are you willing to do to be able to do the work that you love,
that you
right?
want to do,
it's a lot, and it's a lot of shit work, right? And it's your ability to do the work you don't love that defines how good you are as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Because doing the work you love is easy-ish.
Easy, yeah.
So on the weekends, I try to do the work I love a little bit more than the work I don't love, right? Because the week is more about the day-to-day. So during the weekends, and try to I don't go to the lab. I try to just So you can't stop. I can't take days off.
Yeah.
I think of deceleration, right? Just slow down. Do more thought work, more reading work, more long-term work, more textbook work, right? Versus I have to just write these reviews, team reviews, or team notes, or all these things that are not fun to do as much.
I want to know one instruction in Hindi that you give every day, without instruction or one conversation, something that you say every day to your team, which your day can't end without kind of saying that. I'm sure there's something.
One thing.
Because I saw some reels. I mean, there was one funny reel I saw which was MLP. Okay. Then there was one reel I saw which your team made, which was about.
How difficult it is to work with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough workplace. I'm tough to work for, and work with. No, well, yeah, ish. What do I say? Should ask the team. What it is.
You have to interact in Hindi, right?
Hindi mein in Marathi, dude. I speak in Marathi with them, and they laugh at my Marathi because it's so bad. But I try, right? I took classes when I came back. I took 6 months of Marathi classes because I'm I have to speak the local language. So I'm please correct me and teach me how to be better.
Yeah.
But I can speak enough to have a conversation, right? Because again, what you learn from them in their local language is different than even in Hindi, right? For instance.
I'm thinking of the South Delhi girls calling auto walas bhaiya.
Bhaiya?
Yeah.
I say bhavu a lot, right? Kai kartos bhavu? What are you doing? Why is this happening this way? But it's not very, I'm a little awkward about that, I guess. But no, nothing. I don't know. I can't recall. I should ask my team. They'll probably have a better answer.
Okay, so it's very cliche, okay? Because when I wrote it, I didn't know you, so otherwise I would have made it way more interesting. But Bollywood or Hollywood, what would you choose?
Hollywood.
Okay. Economic Times or Financial Times?
Economic Times. I mean, either, both. Yeah, that's fine.
Indian Express or Hindu?
Indian Express.
all
I
of
subscribe
them-
to Indian Express. Yeah. So.
All of them have a different essence, so.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the difference between Economic Times and Financial Times as much. Indian Express, I subscribe to. So not as familiar with the Indian.
In their
papers.
language, yeah. In the way they report news, yeah.
Yeah, and the left versus right lean, right?
Yeah. Would you cast a vote, or would you cast no vote? What would you prefer?
It's a good question.
As of 8th of May 2024.
I don't want to be the nota guy, right? But yeah, at this point, I do feel like I don't have a strong perspective. I mean, I don't.
You have to choose one.
Yeah, I would not vote right now, which is very bad. I should be in trouble for that.
What are the 3 responsibilities that every young person in India should realize as per you?
Responsibilities is 3. This is not
Just the
rapid
top
fire.
3 that come to your mind. No, I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Okay.
I've read your blogs. Okay, I know.
Never be 100% sure of anything. Respect both sides of an argument. Take calculated risks that are focused on long-term gratification.
Okay. Study abroad for an experience, yes or no?
Yes, if you can.
Spend in an MBA or invest in an idea?
Definitely not an MBA. Invest in an idea is also up in the air, depending on what it is. I think, but definitely investing in learning, by customizing your own experiences, doing things a bit more bit more aligned with what you want to do. For some people, an MBA makes a lot of sense, but for a lot of people, MBA is just a stamp. You don't need an MBA, right?
I think for most people.
Yeah, but some people, but I feel like for instance, I have some people who work in our team, who I feel like will do well in MBA, right? They're not, English isn't their first language. They're not very exposed to this business world. For them, an MBA would be very useful, right? And will be and they would be a truly diverse thing. But for somebody else, it's not really as important. So it depends on who you are. But I feel
I'm asking your.
So I think from my perspective, an MBA is so overrated. Such a waste of money. Even a top school MBA is a waste of money.
That's a lot of validation for a lot of decisions I've made.
Yeah, it's a waste of time and money. But hey, I could be wrong.
Okay, Anish, thank you for doing this, and thank you for promising free supplies of sunglasses for all our team members.
Yeah, just I will just get the waste because take a pay cut, and we'll give you the free sunglasses.
No, don't say that.
No, I'm kidding. No.
No, I like the comeback. Somebody has to respond to my jokes the way I joke. So
no, obviously happy to help, man.
No, I'm very grateful you gave your time. I really enjoyed this.
Likewise, thank you so much for asking the right questions and making an effort to
all the very best. You're right there in the middle of things. I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing, and I really hope that this podcast inspires other young people to kind of go out there, explore, get their hands dirty. Super important, I think.
Agreed. Thank you so much for having me and for being such a great host.